The scripture reading today is Psalm chapter 8, verses 1 through 9. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouths of babes and infants, you have founded a bulwark because of your foes, to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are humans that are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
Thanks be to God. As I have the topic of science before me today, I do have the costume change to make, and I want to tell you that as I exchange preacher's robe for lab coat, I made a mistake last week in saying out loud that the thing about the pocket protector. I need to learn, because this is now the seventh pocket protector that I have been gifted in the past week, but hopefully it does the trick. We're talking about science and religion, and I'm aware of how, the visual juxtaposition of the lab coat and the preacher's shirt makes the point, right? That the two are not separate things, and we can talk about them together. We've talked about several different topics, specific scientific topics, and today we turn to the topic of artificial intelligence, AI. Okay, relax back there. Artificial intelligence can be traced, the development of artificial intelligence can be traced by the relative complexity of the games that it is able to play. So, in the early 1950s, it was a great accomplishment to develop an artificial intelligence program that could play the game of checkers, for example. Not a very complicated game, but in order for the computer programmers to input every single board configuration and every single move from every single configuration, and then provide an algorithm to analyze all of those moves and pick the best one, that was brand new. And so it took a long time to teach a computer how to master the game of checkers. Of course, it only got more advanced from there, and after a few decades, computers were able to play the game of chess. In fact, the math for how to play chess on computer was developed by a guy named Alan Turing. I'll talk more about him later, in the 1940s, but the problem was he didn't have a machine that was powerful enough to run the math that was in his brain, which is amazing to think about anyway. Nevertheless, by the mid-1990s, we had computers that not only could play chess, but could beat the international grandmaster Garry Kasparov. How many of you remember Deep Blue? Some of us remember this computer, which was called Deep Blue. It was a computer that was developed by IBM, and it was programmed to play chess. And in 1996, Deep Blue and Garry Kasparov met, and Kasparov won, but just barely. Like, Deep Blue won one of the games, and they had draws on a couple of the games, but Kasparov ended up winning that time. So what the computer scientists did was they took that moment and all that had happened, and they told Deep Blue about it, and it helped Deep Blue develop ways to play chess that were more advanced. And in 1997, the rematch happened, and Kasparov lost. Deep Blue beat Kasparov. And by all accounts, it happened because Kasparov kind of got flustered. He kind of got thrown off by something that the computer did, because the computer apparently made a move that was widely considered to be a completely random move. So Kasparov's there, he knows that this machine is figuring out things and doing things logically and that kind of stuff, but then comes this random move. It doesn't connect to anything, and it just blows him away. Like, there's pictures of him in this event, like with his head in his hands, like, obviously he takes chess very seriously, like more seriously than I do, but like, he resigned that particular game because he just couldn't figure out what Deep Blue was doing. Why was this random move that had no connection to anything? Well, it turned out Deep Blue was presented a situation where there was no best move. So this computer analyzed all the possible moves and realized, well, there isn't one that's really the best at this point, and it got stuck. It got stuck thinking about what move it should make until it was like, well, I guess I'll just do something random and break out of this stuckness. It did this random thing, broke out of the stuckness, it threw Garry Kasparov off, and he lost the match. Amazing. But chess isn't the most complicated game in the world. It's way more complicated than I am. I'm not good at chess. But apparently there's a game called Go. How many of you know about the game called Go? I didn't know about this game until I was researching artificial intelligence, actually. It is apparently like the most complicated board game in the world, with so many millions of board configurations and possible moves, that what the computer scientists realize is that there's no possible way to input all that data into their computer, which was called AlphaGo. So they couldn't program it in the way that previous artificial intelligence had been programmed. Because previously, they just put in all the possibilities, it was human input, and then the computer could sift through all of that to make the right decision to solve the problem. But now, it's too much. There's too much data for a person to enter into the computer. So they just changed the computer. They changed the computer so that it could teach itself all of that stuff. And so they taught it the rules of the game, and then they had it play itself, like on two-player mode, over and over and over and over again until it mastered the game. And sure enough, it beat the world Go champion, who after that match said, I thought this was a computer trying to do everything according to formulas. It turns out, and this is his quote, AlphaGo is creative. Can you imagine a creative machine? So we've gone from, in the year 1951, a machine that is barely able to learn how to play checkers, to 2015, a machine that is creative enough to figure out a way to win the most complicated board game ever. That's only 60 years. That happened in a 60-year window. What in the world is next for AI? Where is artificial intelligence going from here? That's kind of scary, exciting, both exciting and scary. An author by the name of John Hagel was talking at the South by Southwest conference in 2017, and he said this about AI. If we do it right, we might be able to evolve a form of work that taps into our uniquely human capabilities and restores our humanity. The ultimate paradox is that this technology may become a powerful catalyst that we need to reclaim our humanity. Of course, the implications of AI are far beyond playing board games, right? There are medical implications with diagnoses and treatments. There are self-driving cars who aren't going away, by the way. They're there. There are those personal assistants that we have. I imagine many of us in this room have a device on our person that you can talk to. Hey Siri, what's the weather today? How many of you beeped just then? I said that, right? We have the capability now to do those time-consuming administrative tasks that would take us days to do, that AI can get done in a matter of moments and frees us up for other things, right? We have the capability, can you imagine it, to personalize learning strategies for each and every student in each and every classroom in each and every school. The capabilities are phenomenal, and along with all of that, there are some very, very significant ethical questions to ask. Along with all of that, there are some very significant theological questions to ask. The ethics involved with the development of AI is something for all of us to sit with for a minute. I read this week, for example, ethics in AI is a critical concern as it involves making decisions that can impact individuals and society. It necessitates ensuring AI systems are designed and used in ways that prioritize fairness, transparency, and accountability, especially in areas like hiring, healthcare, and criminal justice. As AI continues to advance, it's essential to establish robust ethical frameworks and guidelines to mitigate biases, protect privacy, and promote the responsible development and deployment of artificial intelligence. Now, I mentioned that I read that earlier this week. The way that I read that is that I asked ChatGPT to write 3 sentences about the ethics of AI. And that's what it told me. ChatGPT, by the way, is the most ubiquitous artificial intelligence available. You open up a website, you tell it to do something, and it does it. For example, write 3 sentences about the ethics of AI, and there it was. Could you tell that a computer wrote that and not a person? Maybe that wouldn't have passed the Turing test then. The Turing test, by the way, I mentioned Alan Turing earlier, an English mathematician and brilliant computer scientist, and he came up with this test. He's a pioneer in the field of artificial intelligence, also a code breaker in the English Army during World War II. The Imitation Game, the movie, is about him. So he comes up with this test, and it says, how do you tell if it's a computer or if it's a person? Basically, that's the test. Like, we want to be able to say, oh, no, that was a computer that did that. That wasn't a person. So he said, here's what you have to do. You have to set up a series of interviews. And you have the interviewer that's talking to a computer and a person. And it's all happening through a keyboard, so there's no voices or anything, but the interviewer is talking to the AI and to a person, and the person is instructed to help the interviewer figure out who's human and who's machine based on the questions. But the computer is given permission to lie to the interviewer to try to trick them into guessing wrong. And so Alan Turing says, if a sufficient number of people interview these two things and are able to tell who's the human, then the AI does not pass the Turing test because it hasn't fooled anyone. And to date, no artificial intelligence has officially passed that Turing test, although some developers claim that their particular AI has passed it because, of course, it's their AI and it's the best one and they want you to buy it. So, but officially, none have passed that Turing test. We have more than just the Turing test to figure out what makes humans human. Thank you, Jesus. We have more than just the Turing test to ask the question, what makes a human a human? So in today's reading, Psalm 8, we hear this beautiful praise of God's creation. This is actually a painting by a painter named Michael Carter called Psalm 8 that I just absolutely love. So in Psalm 8, the psalmist is extolling the wonders of God's creation and describing the beauties of all that God has done, and then says, and considering all this, what are people that you even notice us? Who are humans that you're even aware of us? And yet you have made us a little lower than God. Some translations will say a little lower than the angels, a little lower than the divine beings. That's because the word is Elohim, a little lower than Elohim, which is a plural noun, a plural noun that is often used to talk about God. And it's significant that it's plural too, because in Genesis chapter 1, it's the word that we have during that creation story. And God said, let there be. That word God is Elohim. You can hear it, for example, in Genesis 1:26, when God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness. It's noteworthy here that the pronouns in this sentence are plural. And God said, and Elohim said, let us make humankind in our image, in our likeness. The image of God in which we are created is a communal image. It is a relational image. We are created to be in relationship. And specifically, a specific kind of relationship, we are created for love. Because as we well know, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Anyone? Am I alone on this? Nature Boy? Anyway. It's in the American Songbook. It's a classic. Okay. We are created for love. We are created to be in relationship with one another, and specifically to be in love with one another. Thomas Merton put it this way: to say that I am made in the image of God is to say that love is the reason for my existence, for God is love. Love is my true identity, he says. Selflessness is my true self. Love is my true character. Love is my name. What a beautiful thought. How would it change the way we interact with the world if we thought of our identity as love? Hey, nice to meet you. I'm love. And I know that I'm love because I'm created in the image of God, and God is love. Would it not impact the way we talk to one another, the way we interact with the world around us, if our very identity is love? And herein lies the most important distinction for us to make between artificial intelligence and human beings. Because both respond to the world. Artificial intelligence responds to the world as if it is a set of problems to be solved, and it solves them. Human beings, on the other hand, ought to respond to the world as a community in which to love one another. We are human. We are created in the image of God. And that is a dynamic and ever-changing reality that makes it possible for us to respond to the world around us in love. That will always be the difference between machines and human beings. Humans have the capacity within us to respond to the world with love. I know that you think your next-door neighbor is a problem for you to solve. That just makes you a machine. It makes you an artificial intelligence device trying to utilize the algorithms of problem solving to interact with the world. We are created in the divine image. The world is not a set of problems to solve. It is a community in which to love one another, because living is much more than just figuring out how to solve increasingly complex problems. I mean, that's part of it, right? We're supposed to grow, we're supposed to learn, we're supposed to move from checkers to chess to go, metaphorically speaking. We're supposed to become. But if that's all it was, that would be far too neat and tidy, wouldn't it? Far too neat and tidy, because I don't know about you, but neat and tidy doesn't necessarily describe my life. It can be messy from time to time. Dr. Serene Jones puts it this way: theology, she says, asks the really hard questions that have to do with the weirdness of being a human being. The weirdness of being a human being. Theology, she says, responds to our mortality, that we live this bracketed life. It has a beginning and it has an end. And she says being weird in the middle of these brackets means that we are given these days and months and weeks and hours and minutes as a framework in which to have purpose and meaning, and hopefully to find love. And love is far from neat and tidy. Amen? And grief is far from neat and tidy. And sorrow is far from neat and tidy. And joy is far from neat and tidy. None of those are problems to be solved with the application of the correct algorithm. The weirdness of being a human being cannot be programmed into a set of artificial neural networks, no matter how advanced they might be. Listen, artificial intelligence is changing the world as we know it. There can be no doubt. It's not a matter of refusing to interact with it, because it is here. The question is how. How can we interact with artificial intelligence? And maybe it's simply by remembering that we are created in the image of God. That we are created to love and to be loved. And that we respond to the world around us not as a set of problems to be solved, but as a community in which to love God and to love one another.